Welcome to the world of science fiction and forgotten worlds. Alien Universe. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and never miss a new movies and story from this channel. The first thing I heard was a child crying, and that made no sense at all. Nothing lived on Varan 6, not for long. The storms froze metal, the ground swallowed signals, and the things that moved in the dark did not leave bodies behind. Yet the sound was there, small and broken, coming from a crushed survival pod, half buried in black snow. My scanner showed movement around it, slow circles, patient, like hunters, waiting for a trap to open. I should have turned back to my ship, finished the salvage, and left with my payment. That was the smart choice. That was the safe choice. But the crying stopped for a second, and my translator caught one word through the static, a tiny whisper. That said, please. I have walked away from a lot of things in my life, but I could not walk away from that. The pod was dented and clawed, deep marks in the metal, or something had tried to pry it open. The wind howled across the ice, carrying faint clicking sounds that my suit did not recognize. I knelt beside the hatch and tapped once. The crying stopped immediately. For a long moment there was only silence, and then a thin voice answered, in a language I had never heard. The translator struggled, glitched, and finally turned it into broken words. Do not let it hear. That was when I noticed the sensor warning blinking in the corner of my visor. Something big was nearby, moving in slow circles, stopping every few seconds like it was listening. I opened the pod as carefully as I could, just enough to look inside. A tiny figure was curled in the corner, wrapped in torn thermal fabric. Shaking so hard, I thought she might fall apart. She had blue skin, huge black eyes, and arms no thicker than my fingers. She was holding a cracked communicator against her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. When she saw me, she did not look relieved. She looked terrified. Human, she said, and the translator made the words sound like a warning. I raised my hands slowly and told her I would not hurt her, that I was there to help. She did not answer, but she did not scream either, and on that planet silence was the only kind of trust that mattered. The clicking sound outside stopped. The wind died down for one unnatural second, and something heavy pressed against the outer shell of the pod. The metal bent inward with a slow groan. The small alien covered her mouth with both hands and stared at me, her eyes wide. It hears. Heart, she whispered. I could see my pulse climbing on the suit display, loud and fast, and I forced myself to breathe slower. The thing outside tapped the pod 3 times, soft and curious, like it was testing the thickness of the metal. I drew my weapon, but did not fire. One shot would echo across the ice and bring everything in the area down on us. The tapping stopped, replaced by a long, wet inhale, and then the weight lifted. The creature moved away, not in a hurry, not afraid, just certain it would find us again. The girl looked at me for a long time before speaking. You loud inside, she said quietly, as if she was apologizing. I asked her name, and after a hesitation she answered, Lumi. The name sounded fragile, like glass. I told her we were leaving, that I would carry her to my ship, that we would get off this world. She asked me why, and that question hit harder than any monster could. Why help a stranger? Why risk my life for someone not even my own species? Why break the simple rule of survival out here, which was take what you came for and never look back? I did not have a smart answer, so I gave her the only honest one. Because you are not staying here alone. She stared at me like she had never heard those words before. I wrapped her in a thermal blanket and lifted her into my harness, close, enough that I could feel her shaking through the suit. She weighed almost nothing, but the responsibility felt heavy, like I had just changed the direction of my life without meaning to. Outside, The clicking returned, louder now, and my radar lit up with multiple signals moving in from different angles. We stepped out of the pod into the storm, and the first creature stood waiting in the black snow. It had no eyes, only slits, along its jaw that opened and closed as if it were tasting the air. It tilted its head toward us, listening, learning the rhythm of our breathing. Behind it, more shapes moved in the darkness, forming a loose circle that cut off the path back to my ship. I backed away slowly, keeping my steps quiet, but the creatures moved with us, guiding us, not attacking, not rushing, just herding us toward the broken hull of the wreck. That was when I realized they were not hunting randomly. They were steering. U.S. somewhere specific, somewhere with metal walls that would echo every sound we made. The ground trembled under my boots, a deep vibration that came from below the ice. Lumi pressed her face into my chest and whispered, "Not listener, worse." The word listener must have been the name for the things around us, but whatever was under the ground was something they feared. The ice cracked open in a jagged line, and a shadow moved beneath it, enormous and slow. My suit flashed a warning I had never seen before, a hazard classification with no number, only a blank symbol. The creatures did not attack. They stepped back, giving space to the widening crack, like they were waiting for something to rise. That was when I understood the truth. We were not prey. We were bait. Lumi's small voice trembled against my chest as she said, "It knows you will not leave me." The ice exploded upward, black snow scattering into the storm, and something massive began to emerge from the darkness below. I tightened my grip on her and turned toward the only direction left to run, knowing the path was longer, more dangerous, and probably impossible, but also knowing I had already made the choice the moment I opened that pod. On Varan 6, nothing. Survived for long, but for the first time since I landed, I was not thinking about survival. I was thinking about keeping one small alien girl alive, even if the whole planet tried to stop me. The ground burst open behind us, with a sound like metal tearing in half. I did not look back at first. On a world like this, looking back is how you die. I ran. Each step was heavy in the thick gravity, my boots sinking into the black snow, while the storm cut across my visor. Lumi clung to my suit harness, silent, her small hands gripping the fabric like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. The radar screamed warnings, red shapes everywhere, but one signal was different. It was huge, deeper than the rest, moving under the surface, keeping pace with us. The listeners did not chase. They followed at a distance, spreading out in a wide arc. They were guiding us again, pushing us toward the broken research ship. The shattered hull rose ahead like a dead skeleton, its open corridors black and narrow. Sound would echo inside, trapped space, perfect for creatures that hunted by hearing heartbeats. I changed direction, cutting toward a field of jagged ice instead. The terrain was rough, sharp ridges and deep cracks, but it would slow anything. Large coming from below. "Too loud," Lumi whispered, her voice shaking inside my helmet. "Ice sings." She was right. Every step on the frozen ridges made a high, thin sound that carried far in the storm. I forced myself to slow down, placing my feet carefully, breathing through my nose to keep the sound low. My heart was still pounding, and I could see the rhythm flashing on my display like a beacon. Lumi lifted one hand from the harness and pressed it against my chest plate again. That strange calm spread through me, soft and warm, dulling the edge of panic. My pulse dropped. The radar pings around us hesitated, as if the creatures had lost our exact position. Then the ice ahead bulged upward. I skidded to a stop as a massive shape moved beneath the surface, pushing through the frozen ground like it was water. The ice split in a long line, racing toward us. There was no time to run. I jumped sideways into a narrow crevice just as the surface exploded. A towering limb, armored in black plates, slammed down where I had been standing a second before. The impact threw shards of ice into the air and knocked me against the rock wall. My suit alarms flared, warning of damage, but nothing critical. I pulled myself deeper into the crack, holding Lumi close, both of us silent. Outside, the huge thing shifted, searching. It did not move like the listeners. It moved with slow certainty, feeling vibrations through the ground, tasting every tremor. One wrong motion and it would know exactly where we were. The listeners gathered around the edge of the broken ice, restless but careful, like scavengers, waiting for the larger predator to finish its work. They were not the real threat. They were the cleanup crew. Lumi's voice was barely a breath in my ear. Ground hunter. It eats cities. I closed my eyes for 1 second, steadying myself. The path to the ship was gone. The open field was death. The wreck was a trap. That left only one option, a narrow canyon to the east that my map had marked as unstable terrain. Not safe, not easy, but full of stone, not ice. Stone would not carry our heartbeats as far. I leaned close to Lumi and whispered, "We move when?" "It turns slow, no sound." She nodded against my chest. Outside, the ground hunter lifted its massive limb and drove it down again, further away this time, following the vibrations of the storm instead of us. The listeners shifted with it, their attention pulled toward the new movement. For a few seconds, the space around our crevice was empty. That was our moment. I stepped out onto the ice, placing my feet carefully, every movement controlled, every breath measured. The canyon entrance was a dark line in the distance, maybe 200 meters away. It might as well have been 2,000. Behind us, the ground hunter slammed into the ice again, and the shockwave rippled through my boots. Lumi tightened her grip, but she did not make a sound. Halfway to the canyon, my suit emitted a soft warning tone. Power levels dropping. The cold was draining the battery faster than expected. If the suit failed, the temperature alone would kill Lumi in minutes. I pushed the thought away and kept moving. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying our scent, our heat, our tiny sounds back toward the creatures. One of the listeners stopped and turned its skull-like head directly toward us. Its jaw slits opened wide. It had heard something, not our steps, not our breathing, but the faint mechanical whine of my failing suit. It let out a low call. The others answered. The hunt began again. I broke into a run, no longer able to hide our sound, the canyon mouth growing closer with every heavy step. The ground behind us shattered as the ground hunter surged forward beneath the ice, faster now, drawn by the noise. Lumi pressed her hand against my chest, trying to calm my heart, but it was too loud, too fast. The canyon walls rose on either side, tall stone cutting the wind, swallowing the storm's scream. I crossed the threshold just as the ice behind us exploded upward, the massive limb slamming down where we had been a heartbeat before. Inside the canyon, the sound changed. The echoes were strange, bouncing off the stone in uneven patterns, good for hiding, bad for running. I did not stop until we reached a bend that blocked the line of sight from the open field. Only then did I drop to one knee, gasping, my suit power warning flashing brighter. Lumi looked up at me, her eyes reflecting the dim light. "Human," she said softly. "You still here?" I managed a tired laugh. "Told you I wouldn't leave." But in the distance, from the canyon entrance, I heard the listeners entering the stone corridor, their careful steps sending slow, searching clicks along the rock. And deeper below, the ground hunter began to dig. The canyon walls closed around us, tall and uneven, blocking the storm, but trapping every sound we made. My breathing echoed back at me, too loud, too fast. and the suit kept flashing the same warning low-power dropping temperature. Loomies. Small hand stayed pressed to my chest, trying to slow my heart, but I could feel her shaking now. The cold was getting through the blanket. Behind us, the listeners entered the canyon. Their steps were different on stone, softer, careful, each one followed by a faint clicking that bounced along the rock like sonar. They were mapping the space, learning the shape of the canyon through sound alone. Running would only tell them exactly where we were. Hiding was the only chance. I spotted a narrow split in the canyon wall, barely wide enough for my shoulders. I turned sideways and slipped inside, pulling Lumi close so her blanket would not scrape against the stone. The passage opened into a small hollow, a pocket of darkness surrounded by rough rock. No wind, no loose ice. Good cover if we stayed silent. I lowered myself to the ground and powered down every non-essential system in my suit. The lights dimmed, the display faded, and the only sound left was the slow hum of life support. The temperature dropped immediately. Cold seeped through the metal and into my bones. Lumi shifted weakly. "Too cold," she whispered. I hesitated for only a second before breaking the last safety rule. I unlocked the chest plate and opened a narrow gap, just enough to pull her inside against the thermal layer of the suit. Warm air escaped in a thin cloud. The cold rushed in, biting at my skin, but her shaking eased as she curled against me. "Human, you will freeze," she said. "Not before you do," I answered quietly. Outside, a listener stopped near the opening of the hollow. I could hear its slow breathing, the wet rasp of air moving through its jaw slits. It tapped the canyon wall twice, sending vibrations through the stone. The sound passed over us like a wave. I forced myself not to move, not even to swallow. Lumi went completely still, her tiny body barely rising with each breath. The creature waited. Seconds stretched into something longer. Then it moved on, the clicking fading deeper into the canyon. I exhaled slowly, careful not to make a sound. For a moment there was nothing but darkness, and the faint tremor of the ground far below. The ground hunter was still digging, slower now, feeling for us through the rock. It would not stop. Creatures like that did not give up. They waited until the planet itself told them where the prey was. Lumi tilted her head against my chest. "Why you come here?" she asked softly. "Salvage job," I said. "Wrecked ship, easy money. That was the plan." She was quiet for a while. Then she asked, "You're kind. Always come back for small ones?" The question hit harder than any impact. I thought about the company, the budget cuts, the rescue, teams that no longer existed. I thought about the report that said no survivors expected. I thought about how close I had been to believing it. "No," I admitted, "not always. But we should." She seemed to think about that. "My people say humans are loud and dangerous." I smiled faintly in the dark. "We are. Also. Stubborn," she added, "very." A deep vibration rolled through the stone, stronger than before. Dust fell from the ceiling of the hollow. The ground hunter had reached the edge of the canyon and was pushing into the rock itself, tearing a new path beneath us. It was not guessing anymore. It was following the heat of my failing suit. My power indicator dropped another level. The life support timer calculated a new estimate and displayed it in cold numbers. Not enough to reach the ship if we stayed hidden much longer. I closed the chest plate again and sealed Lumi back inside the harness, wrapping the blanket tighter. "We have to move," I whispered. She nodded, though I could feel her fear rising again. Outside, the canyon was no longer silent. The listeners had spread out, their clicking forming a net of sound that filled the corridor. Every path forward carried their echoes. Every step would announce us. unless we changed the rules. I reached into my pack and pulled out a small salvage beacon, the kind used to mark wreckage for orbital pickup. It had its own power source, and more importantly, a loud automatic ping. Lumi's eyes widened when she saw it. Loud thing, she breathed. Exactly, I said. I set the beacon at the far edge of the hollow, aimed down a side passage that led away from the canyon's main path. Then I armed it and rolled it into the darkness. The first ping echoed like a gunshot. The listeners reacted instantly. There. Clicks snapping toward the new sound. Shadows moved past our hiding place, rushing toward the false signal. Even the ground hunter shifted below, drawn by the vibration. Now, I whispered. We slipped out of the hollow and moved in the opposite direction, deeper into the canyon, our steps slow and careful despite the urgency. The echoes of the beacon continued to pulse behind us, buying seconds, maybe minutes. For the first time since we entered the canyon, the path ahead was empty. But the deeper we went, the darker it became, and the walls began to close in, stone marked with long claw scars that were far too large to belong to any listener. Lumi touched one of the gouges as we passed. Her voice was barely a sound. Ground hunter comes here to sleep. I stopped. If this was its den, then we had not escaped it. We had walked straight into its home. The claw marks were fresh, not old, not abandoned, but sharp at the edges, the stones still dusted on the ground beneath them. The air inside the canyon changed as we moved deeper, warmer, thick with a faint metallic smell. My suit picked up heat. Pockets under the rock, slow pulses like a heartbeat that did not belong to any living thing I understood. We go back, I whispered. Lumi did not move. Her eyes were fixed on the wall ahead, where the canyon widened into a dark chamber. A low glow came from inside, soft and blue, the same color as her skin. My people, she said. I frowned. What? She slipped out of my harness before I could stop her and stepped toward the chamber. I followed, every instinct screaming that this was a trap. The floor sloped downward into a hollow carved by something massive. At the center lay a cluster of smooth shapes, half buried in dust and stone. Eggs, dozens of them, each one the size of a cargo crate, their shells black and ridged, faintly warm, faintly pulsing. The ground hunter's nest. I grabbed Lumi and pulled her back, my voice shaking. We need to leave now. She did not resist, but she pointed at the nearest egg. A thin crack ran along its surface, and from inside came a weak, irregular tapping. Not a monster sound. A signal. Lumi reached out and pressed her palm against the shell. The blue glow from her skin spread across the black surface like frost. The tapping inside changed, becoming steady, rhythmic, almost like a response. They are not eggs, she said quietly. They are pods. My mind struggled to catch up. Pods 4. What? She looked at me, and for the first time since I found her, there was no fear in her eyes, only sadness. For us. The canyon trembled as something massive shifted below. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the eggs around us pulsed faster, their surfaces reacting to the vibration. My suit scanner tried to analyze the structures, and returned a result that made my stomach drop. Life support, stasis, multiple signatures. The ground hunter was not just a predator. It was a carrier. Lumi's voice was soft, almost lost under the distant scraping of claws on stone. My people do not crash here by accident. We hide inside these worlds. The big ones protect us. They carry our sleeping pods deep underground where no empire can find us. I stared at the rows of black shells, at the faint blue light inside each crack. You're saying those things. The ones trying to kill us are guardians, she finished. The word echoed in my helmet like a verdict. Then why did they attack the shuttle? I demanded. Her gaze dropped. Because you opened the sky, your ships are loud. They thought you were hunters. The memory of the torn hull flashed in my mind, the claw marks, the missing crew. Not slaughter, but defense. We had landed on a hidden refuge and started cutting into it for salvage. The ground hunter was not chasing us. It was trying to drive us away from the pods. The listeners were not hurting us to die. They were pushing us toward the nest so the Guardian could see what we carried. So it could see. Lumi. A deep roar rolled through the canyon, closer now, shaking the stone beneath our feet. The ceiling cracked open at the far end of the chamber as a massive limb forced its way through, tearing rock like paper. The ground hunter was emerging into its nest, drawn by the heat of my suit and the movement of the opened pod. I raised my weapon out of instinct. Lumi placed her small hand over it and lowered it gently. "If you fight," she said, her voice steady, "it will kill you. Then what do we do?" I asked. She stepped away from me and walked toward the center of the chamber, toward the eggs, toward the opening where the enormous creature was breaking through. Every part of me wanted to grab her and run, but something in her posture stopped me. She was not afraid anymore. She was going home. The ground hunter's head forced through the rock, larger than any creature I had ever seen, armored plates grinding against stone, jaw opening to release a blast of hot air that filled the chamber. It lowered itself toward Lumi, massive and unstoppable. My heart pounded, loud enough to bring the listeners running, loud enough to trigger every hunting instinct in that monster. But Lumi raised both hands and pressed them against its armored face. The blue glow spread across its black shell. The creature stopped. The tremors faded. The listeners outside fell silent. Inside my helmet, every alarm went quiet at once, as if the planet itself had paused. Lumi turned her head slightly and looked back at me. "They were never hunting me," she said. "They were waiting for me." The ground hunter lowered itself completely, folding its massive limbs beneath its body like a kneeling giant. The eggs around us pulsed in unison, their blue light growing brighter, responding to her presence. And then my suit display flashed a new message, one I had never seen before, overriding every system. Foreign network detected. Biosignal link established. Lumi was not just a survivor. She was the key that controlled the guardians of this world. And every human ship in orbit, including mine, had just been marked as a threat. My comm unit screamed with an incoming alert from orbit. Automated defense warnings, target locks, navigation denial. My ship's system had just identified the ground hunter as hostile and was preparing to fire a remote kinetic strike. Standard corporate protocol. If something threatened the asset, eliminate it. The asset was me, and I was standing inside the nest of the creature it was about to hit. "Lumi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "my ship is going to attack." She looked at me, confused. "Your sky thing will hurt the Guardian?" "Yes, and if it does, everything down here will die. You, the pods, all of it." The ground hunter shifted slightly, not aggressive, just aware, its massive form still. Bowed before her. It trusted her. That was the real twist. The most dangerous thing on this planet was not her protector. It was my own species. I opened a direct channel to my ship and overrode the automated command queue. The interface demanded a corporate authorization code I no longer had. My contract did not include rescue privileges. My voice did not matter to the system dot, so I did the only thing I could. I flagged myself as non-recoverable salvage. That single. Command transferred my life sign from ISET to debris. The ship accepted it immediately. Target lock on my position vanished, but so did my extraction priority. I had just told my only way off this planet to leave without me. Lumi stepped closer. "Human, what you do bought you time, I said. The ship's engines ignited in the distance, a faint vibration through the rock. It was leaving orbit, abandoning the mission, abandoning me. Standard procedure. No asset, no recovery. Listeners outside the canyon began to move again, but not toward us. They spread out, forming a wide perimeter around the nest, their clicks low and steady, like sentries returning to their posts. The ground hunter lowered its head until its armored face was level with me. I could see my reflection in the black. Plates, a small figure standing beside a smaller one, both of us alive, because I had finally stopped treating this world like something to take from my suit power, dropped to its final reserve. The temperature warning turned critical. I did not have long. Lumi looked up at me, her eyes bright with that same blue light that filled the chamber. "You stay," she said. It was not a question. "Looks that way," I answered with a tired smile. She reached out and took my hand, her small fingers warm despite the cold. The glow spread from her skin into my glove, then into the suit itself. My display flickered, confused, then stabilized. Power levels stopped falling. Life support recalibrated to a new energy source I did not understand. "Soft think," she said gently. "Share." The warmth spread through the suit, into my chest, into my lungs. The cold retreated. The alarms went silent. The ground hunter shifted again, not as a predator, but as something closer to a shelter, its massive body blocking the open crack in the canyon wall, sealing us inside a pocket of still air and heat. "You saved me," Lumi said. I shook my head. "We saved each other." She looked back at the rows of pods, the sleeping forms of her people waiting beneath the stone. "My kind hide because the loud ones always take," she said. "But you did not take. You stayed." I thought about the company, the contracts, the long list of worlds stripped for resources. I thought about how easy it would have been to walk away when I first heard her cry. "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But you did," she replied. Outside, the storm faded. The canyon grew quiet. For the first time since I landed on Varan 6, the planet did not feel hostile. It felt watchful, like a guardian that had decided I was no longer an intruder. My unit pinged one last time. A weak signal from my departing ship, an automated message confirming mission closure and asset loss. To them, I was gone. To Lumi, I was still here. She climbed onto the edge of one of the pods and pressed her hands against its surface. The blue light spread from pod to pod, a network awakening, slow and patient. Her people would not stay hidden forever. They would rise when it was safe, when the loud ones stopped coming to take. "You will not be alone," she said. Looking back at me, I believed her. The smallest survivor had found her home again, and I had found something I had lost a long time ago, a reason to stay that was not measured in credits or contracts. Up in orbit, my ship disappeared into the dark, leaving no path back to the life I had before. Down in the canyon, surrounded by sleeping worlds and a guardian that now watched over us both, I made a different choice. Not the smart one, not the safe one, the human one. I stayed.